And by the fertilizing of these seeds and their growth, and the constant tending of them by the wise gardener, old Prof, that these souls will grow and will bear their fruit, and this fruit will be for the healing of the nations and for all that suffers. Now Prof, the one-legged gardener, of course, is the keeper of the tree of life, and he represents time. And he is time which makes all things come to their natural growth and harvest. Therefore all things that are ordained are perfected by time and are under the guardianship of time, and are fulfilled in time. And man's soul, which has an origin in time, is peculiarly under the domination of this dimension of symbolism. We know psychologically what we mean by the soul. We know from the standpoint of Freudian analysis or Jungian analysis that we regard the soul as a kind of internal person. Lincoln saw it as more than that, very much more than that. Although they would not refute much of what has been done since. They would demand that the whole thought be extended very much further. Let us then try to understand, without going into too many side issues, something of the situation with which we are primarily concerned at the moment. Let us say that we will first analyze the principles of sulfur, salt, and mercury. Sulfur, we now know to be the sun, which is the farther light. The sun is universal being, universal reality, universal light. The sun also is the seat or ground of cosmic consciousness. It is the cause and source of reality. It is reality. It is being. It is actuality. It is universal existence, forever existing, and forever full of life, forever germinal or seminal, filled with seed, forever bestowing itself. On the level of man's experience, this he turns his spiritual nature, and he conceives of a spiritual entity nourished and sustained by this spiritual life of the universe. And he therefore accepts the king both as spirit and as God, and makes the king the administrator of all the laws, principles of nature, and the source of all concepts of divinity, the one, the beautiful, and the good. This being is total and complete light. Light not of the physical world, but of the inner world. The light of the fullness of spiritual grace in all matters. This is then sulfur, which is the fire which sustains itself forever, and is the principle of fire in all things. This is the source of the fire of aspiration. This is the source of the ever-burning lamp and the altar fire that never fails. It is the symbol of the spiritual identity, the spiritual interior of everything that exists. Salt, you have to remember, is associated with the tragedy of Lot's wife, who turned back and was turned into a pillar of salt. Salt is the symbol of crystallization. Salt then tells us the story of body. It tells us the story of matter. It tells us of the extreme polar opposite of absolute life is relative privation of life. Because the alchemists did not believe that there could be a place anywhere which was totally devoid of life. Thus, the greater degree of life is sulfur, and the least conceivable degree of life is salt. He carries it on the moral plane where the philosopher of old said that evil is the least degree of good. Therefore, salt is the least degree of sulfur. the salt must consume salt. Because in this universe, there is no part of it in which reality does not have an existence. But in sulfur we have the total expression of reality, and in salt we have the failure, the total failure of expression of reality. As the alchemist says, sulfur sleeps in the salt, it dies in the salt. The universal consciousness dies in matter. It is obliterated by the fact of matter. It lurks within matter. For what is matter finally but infinite life expressing through certain qualities, through certain attributes? Yet this life we do not comprehend as life, but regard as the antithesis of life. Therefore, spirit and its antithesis are sulfur and salt. Now in the beginning, according to the opening chapters of Genesis, God created the heavens and the earth. He caused to emerge from his own nature the two great principles, the king and queen, sulfur and salt. And the salt, or the abyss, was without shape and void. And this power which was creating divided the firmament and placed part of the firmament above and part below. And he divided the deep from the deep. And in this process of causing this division to occur, we can use another very interesting alchemical device. In one of the early books of the great alchemist Lamprey, we have a scene which shows the king, or the supreme power, moving in a whirlwind over the face of the deep. And we find the great abyss lying spread out below, and we have the scene of the power of God moving above and the great depths below. And the waters which were above the firmament were divided from the waters which were beneath the firmament. And the waters beneath the firmament were ocean. And the waters above the firmament were Shemayim, the water of life. And in the midst of these powers, in the midst of this great division that took place, there suddenly emerged the grand form of Elohim, the Creator. And the Elohim, or the builders, the seven powers, shooting out from the mystery of the Word, are suspended between heaven and earth. And here the seven powers gather together the form of the world, causing it to arise between the abyss and abyss, causing it to exist between time and eternity, and fashioning it magnificently from the abstract principle of sulfur and salt. And the seven powers which bring forth the creation, the Elohim, the vowels of the sacred word, are represented in the book of Lamprey by Mercury, the ancient, the great power of the catalander, the winged being, the messenger from heaven to earth and from earth to heaven, who carrying his mysterious rod wound with the serpent, brings forth from the below the shadow of the world form and unites it above with the descending hierarchy of the world spirit. So between these two extremes of ether and chaos, time and eternity, being and not being, and out of the great darkness that they be called the Umbras, comes forth the mystery of the primary and primordial generation. And this power, this mystery which came forth, is the world soul, described by the Greek authors as things with many heads, bearing all manner of likenesses and breaking through the edge of time, born from the egg which is made by the whirlings of ether and chaos. All these symbols go right back to the same basic principle, namely that the ancients recognized that existence was the result of the striving of polarities, or of opposite beings. And Einstein had come to practically the same concept. That life and life as we know it are the friction of the motions, the qualitative motions of basic energy. Not the quantitative, but the qualitative motions. And that these bring forth the revealed form of things out of the great abyss, out of the great darkness. This is the meaning of the Hindu concept that these creations came as the result of will and yoga. The duality produces between itself a being in which its own attributes are present, and this being is called the soul, the universal soul, fashioned in the womb of chaos. And this soul becomes the basis of the creation of the human soul, which in turn is the child of striving, the progeny of the mingling of heaven and earth, of time and eternity, of being and not being. The soul's man is engendered by being and not being, by realization and ignorance, by experience and intuition, by reason and love, and by the minglings of all the opposites, which goes forth into this vast psychic container from which will be born the radiant form of the deity Hades, bursting from the egg and taking power and supremacy over the dark field of mystery in which it was created or conceived. Soul, therefore, represents the objectification of spirit and matter, brought together as a being. And all things that emerge in the middle distances of man's experience are therefore distinctly related to soul itself. Now, in the further development of this same allegory, we have Adam introduced as a being into which the breath of life was breathed. Now, if we go back into the ancient Kabbalistic legends about Adam, we find that Adam's body was composed of the 7 planets, that each one of the great powers of space bestowed an attribute upon it. And each of these in turn gave a treasure to Adam, so that when he became a living thing, Adam contained within himself the 7 souls. And at that time it was also conceived that he was androgynous, male-female in 2 forms united back to back, and that the Lord of the Elohim cut them asunder, and made the male-female being into a male and female being. Here again is a definite allegory about the soul, for the soul itself is essentially an androgynous being. We have a story which we told you about some time ago in connection with Balzac's story of Terapita, in which we have again this allegory of the soul. This particular treatment developed according to the philosophy of Bernays. So in the alchemical, to return to it once more, we have the union of the life and chaos, of time and eternity within a bubble. We have the miniature replica of all that has been done, taking place within the soul of the human being himself, the alchemical resource. And in the study of this mystery, we find that man recapitulates by a series of renovations or a series of augmentations, as they are termed in chemistry, the history and generation of his world, the formation of his own nature and being, and the final release of his own soul. Now, as the soul is composed of the strivings of spirit and matter, and is bound into this artificial compound by the magic wand of Bernays, it becomes essential to our subject to try to understand more about the reasons for its existence and the ultimate end for which it is intended.